Hi guys, welcome to Christy's Book Corner. I'm your host Christy Mason, and today we are going to be reading Finding Jacob Wetterling. And today's chapter is going to be broken up into 3 parts. So I'm going to do 10 pages in each part. So here is part 1 of chapter 10. Here we go. Chapter 10, The Forgotten Man. We searched his house, because we were looking for Jacob Wetterling. Janelle Kendall, Stearns County Attorney. When investigators raided the small white house located at 55 Merle Avenue South in the central Minnesota town of Annandale on July 28th, that was August 28th, 2015. Oh, that's after I got hired at Costco. They came around with a computer and several blind binders filled with, actually I was at the cottage at the time, filled with images of child pornography, several bins of children's clothing, and photographs of known victims of child exploitation, and plethora of evidence to support charges against the owner of the home, Daniel James Heinrich, what they came looking for, but were unable to find was Jacob Wetterling. After the search of his home, Danny Heinrich told some of his neighbors that investigators had seized pornography from his home, but not to worry because none of the pictures were of their children, while some of his neighbors later learned of the truth about the search. They quickly kept to themselves what the rest of the world would soon learn. Danny Heinrich was someone few people knew well, and even fewer had any inkling he had been a suspect in the Wetterling case, or that he had long been a suspect in the Painesville cases and Jared's case. To better understand the significance of Heinrich as a suspect in the Wetterling case and the culmination of decades of investigation, it is necessary to go back to the early days of Heinrich himself. The raid on his home and the information that was discovered there after shed new light on a number of incidences that occurred prior to October 22nd, 1989. Daniel James Heinrich was born at Painesville Hospital on March 21st, 1963. His parents were, wow, that's after my dad. He's as old as my dad. His parents were Howard and Corinne Heinrich. He grew up in a family home on Lake Coronis, along with his older brother David and younger brother Tommy. His father worked on the construction trades, building bridges for Lunda Construction Company. It was a job that demanded a lot of travel and often took him away from his family. Danny dropped out of high school during his junior year in 1981, but his troubles began long before in 1977 when he was 14. A neighbor's cabin on Lake Coronis burned down. There was a fire back in the cabin over there, a neighbor said. They said there's 2 boys in there. I didn't know who they were until later on they identified Danny Heinrich as one of them. Everything burned. Howard and Corinne Heinrich divorced in 1978 when Danny was 15. That event had a significant impact on his life, and he had a hard time coping. Danny's mother soon began dating Duran Allen Hart. Oh my God, so they do have a really... Oh, wow. Hart court records indicated that Danny spent time as a patient at the Wilmar Regional Treatment Center, a hospital known for its treatment programs for chemical dependency, and mental illnesses. Heinrich had several minor run-ins with law enforcement in the years that followed, but ultimately committed more serious crimes. He was arrested for burglary in Stearns County in 1984. He also had trouble drinking and driving, with DWI convictions in 1982 and 1986. Burglary convictions stemmed from his arrest inside a business in Painesville, although he claimed that he did not steal anything. Stearns County Deputy Dennis Poehler was on patrol near Painesville in the early mornings hours of March 30th, 1984, when a VRDA alarm indicated a probable burglary in the process at the Twice as Nice store, where other recent burglaries had occurred. Poehler, along with Painesville Police Department Sergeant Bill Drager, responded to the call. When they arrived, they found that the front door glass had been broken. Poehler and Drager searched the building with a K-9 and found Danny Heinrich hiding inside a pile of boxes. "I don't know what got into me," Heinrich told Poehler. "I don't know why I do these things." After being taken to the Painesville police station, Heinrich admitted he had also broken into the Minnegasso building earlier in the night. Sergeant Drager investigated and found a broken window at the Minnegasso building. Heinrich told Poehler he had entered the buildings in search of money, but that he took nothing from either business. During court proceedings on the burglary cases, Heinrich, then 21, acknowledged he was having a difficult time dealing with his parents' divorce. He said he had also lost money due to the gambling habit, and the combination of these troubles led him to steal from a Painesville area business. Heinrich's defense attorney, Phil Prokofiev, spoke of Danny's personal problems when he addressed the court. "Danny still doesn't know why he did this," Prokofiev told the court. "He was lonesome, bored with his life. He had some family problems." Heinrich pleaded guilty to 2 counts of third-degree burglary. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail with work release privileges and was placed on probation for 5 years. Heinrich was also ordered to pay resolution for the property damage. On the night of August 30th, 1986, Painesville police officer Stephen McCall was escorted to the manager of a liquor store to the First State Bank to make his nightly deposit. As Limick pulled his square car up to the front of the bank, he heard tires squealing on the nearby street. He saw a maroon-colored car run at a stop sign and gave chase. The pursuit ended behind a feed plant, where Limick apprehended Daniel Heinrich. His breath smelled of alcohol, and he was verbally abusive and combative, at one point damaging the squad car with a wild swing of his leg. Searching Heinrich's vehicle, Limick found a handheld police scanner that was set to monitor transmissions of the SCSO. The scanner was confiscated, and Heinrich was taken to the Painesville police station, where a breathalyzer registered his blood alcohol level at 0.17%, over the legal limit for operation of a motor vehicle. Heinrich was charged with a DWI and 5th-degree assault against a police officer, and also for having a scanner in his car. He pleaded guilty to the DWI, and the other charges were dropped. He was sentenced on February 2nd, 1987 to 90 days in jail, and was required to attend weekly Alcohol Anonymous meetings. Heinrich had an earlier DWI confession in 1982 in the city of Wilmar. He was charged with having an open container of alcohol in the car in that incident. Heinrich seemed to find alcohol-related trouble quite often. Chris Chris Larson, a former neighbor, remembered the guy did drink a lot. There was a couple of times in his car. One time the cops pulled him over and confiscated all the beer. By 1986, Daniel Heinrich was living at the Plaza Hotel building located at 121 Washburn Avenue in downtown Painesville. His apartment was located near the epicenter of a string of attacks on juvenile boys that occurred from 1986 through 1988. The incidents were reported in Painesville press, and Painesville police warned the police to keep their children home after dark. In nearly all the cases, the boys had been downtown and were heading home when the incidences occurred. According to an article published in the Painesville Press in April 1986, a 12-year-old boy reported that on March 6, 1986, a man driving an old dark blue four-door car approached him as he was walking near G&T Food in Painesville. The man attempted to coax the boy into his car, offering to take him to Toyland. The boy was able to get away. Of all the incidences that would follow in the town of Painesville over the next 2 years, this was the only one that reportedly involved a vehicle. It may have been a sign of things to come. In August of 1986, a boy was bicycling through an alley behind Papa's Pizza at 108 West Hoffman Street in downtown Painesville, when a white man attacked him. A man jumped out at him and knocked him off his bike. He punched the boy in the nose without saying a word. The boy fled and later described his assailant as a husky white male, about 5'9" tall. He wore a mud-like substance on his face. On August 21, 1986, two juvenile boys were heading home from Papa's Pizza when a heavy-set man hit one of the boys in the back of the head, knocking him to the ground. Once the boy was on the ground, the man groped his front pockets. When the boy's friend came to his defense, the assailant took off running. The man didn't say a word during the assault. The boys described him as being 5'6" to 5'8" tall, wearing a long-sleeved sweater and gloves. Another Painesville incident occurred November 30, 1986. A boy reported that a heavy-set man wearing a nylon windbreaker asked him in the area of 603 Augusta Avenue. The man darted out from the bushes in an alley and put his hand over the boy's mouth, then dragged him into a patch of trees and told him not to speak or he would kill him. His voice was low and filled with eerie static, and his hands smelled like cigarette smoke. The assailant rubbed the boy's testicles over his clothing as well as under his clothing. He removed the boy's stocking cap and used a knife to cut off a lock of his hair. He asked the boy his name and age, and upon leaving, ordered him to keep laying down for 5 minutes, or I'll blow your head off. The Painesville Press reported on August 21st and November 30th incidents in their December 9th, 1986 edition. Police hadn't definitively connected the two crimes, and there were no clear suspects at the time, but they noted that in both cases the victims were attacked from behind. On Valentine's Day 1987, a boy had just left Papa's Pizza and went into an apartment building at 122 West James Street. A heavy-set man attacked him as he entered the stairwell, grabbing him and throwing him down the steps. When the boy started to scream, the man threatened to kill him if he did not keep quiet. The attacker grabbed the boy's penis again, both over and under the boy's clothing. The man spoke in a deep, low whisper as he asked the boy what grade he was in. He stole the boy's wallet and left on foot. The boy described him as being about 5'6", tall, and wearing a dark-colored quilt jacket with a mask covering his face. On May 17, 1987, the same boy was riding his bike on Main Street in Painesville when he was attacked again by a man who had about the same build as the earlier assaults, and the man grabbed the boy off his bike and groped his testicles. This is not appropriate for kids. The attacker fled on foot, but this time he left behind something that would later help identify him. A baseball cap. The boy described him as a plungy with a dark face and dark-colored clothing. The man said nothing during the attack, but the boy believed this assailant and his previous one were the same man. On the front page of its May 26, 1987 edition, the Painesville Press reported on the February 14th and May 17 assaults, along with 3 prior incidences. Sergeant Bill Drager said that the police were taking the assaults very seriously, noting that in all 5 cases that the boys were between 12 and 16 years old. After this guy grabs the boys, Drager said, he tells them, "Don't run, turn around, or I'll blow your head off." And in at least one incident, he used a knife. Drager further noted that in all instances, insists the boys had been downtown just prior to the assaults. "I think he's picking them out downtown and then following them home," said Drager, "or lying in wait for them to go home." Nearly a year passed before the next report incident occurred. In late summer of 1988, a small group of boys was camping in the wooded area near 200 West Railroad Avenue in Painesville. The boys were thirsty, so 2 of them went off to get drinks from a nearby vending machine. A man came out of nowhere and tackled one of the boys and sat on him forcefully. The boy screamed, and as he did, the attacker held a knife to his throat and threatened, "Shut up or I'll kill you." The boy was able to get away without being groped by the attacker. The man was described as a white male with a husky build. He spoke in a raspy voice and was wearing a pantyhose mask, black gloves, and black boots. He was also wearing camouflage pants and looked like an army jacket. The last of the reported incidences in Painesville occurred in the fall of 1988. A boy was discovered delivering newspaper on his bicycle near 512 West Minnesota Street when he stopped briefly to drop off a paper and was attacked by a husky male. The man charged out of the treed area and knocked the boy off his bicycle. He then fled the area. The boys described him as being about 5'6" tall and wearing a dark ski mask, dark stocking cap, black shirt, black pants, and black gloves. Although the Painesville incidences had been reported on multiple times over the previous 2 years, many city residents were generally unaware of the string of assaults and juveniles. If the Painesville police were suspecting Daniel James Heinrich in those assaults, it was a well-kept secret. Serial pedophiles, much like serial killers, often escalate their behavior over time. FBI profilers cite a number of factors that contribute to this, but chief among them is the criminals' growing confidence and increasing need to satisfy the urge that drive their behavior. When the strings of incidences in Painesville seemed to have come to a stop in 1988, it was likely not because the assailtant had ceased his activities, but because he had moved away, been jailed, or some other offense, or was preparing to move on the next level. On Friday, January 13, 1989, 12-year-old Jared was abducted from the streets of Cold Springs, Minnesota. If the kidnapper was the same man involved in the Painesville cases, he indeed had escalated his criminal behavior to the next level. Jared had been in the park area long without hanging out with friends, and later on they went for an evening snack at the side cafe in the downtown area of Cold Springs. Shortly before 9:45 p.m., he was walking along toward his home, just a few blocks down the street, when a man in a dark blue four-door car pulled up alongside him and asked for directions to the Kramer home. It seemed like a normal request. Here was a man who seemed to be a bit lost, but had a general idea of where he was going. As Jared started giving directions, the man got out of his car and grabbed him by the shoulder, and then shoved him into the back seat. The door in the back seat of the car were equipped with child safety locks, so there was no way for Jared to escape, even if he was able to overcome the initial shock of being abducted. The man displayed no weapon, but he threatened the boy, saying that he had a gun and wasn't afraid to use it. The man drove the car away from the abduction location and told the boy to cover his face with a stocking cap. He then ordered Jared to lay down in the back seat. Despite being down in the back seat as the man drove them out of town, Jared had about to recognize several landmarks along the way. He noticed passing the John Paul apartment building in the 200 block of 8th Avenue North. From there, the kidnapper followed County Highway 158 to the west, going up Bells Hill and then a bit south to State Highway 23. Highway 158 ended at Highway 23, and he noted that the man turned right toward the town of Richmond. Jared paid close attention to details as the man drove him to the rural area just north of Richmond. He would later recall passing by the ballpark in Richmond, and once the driver finally stopped the car, he could see the distinctive city lights of Richmond. Jared's attention to detail would later help investigators narrow down likely suspects in this case. For example, he noticed that the man had a handheld police radio with an antenna sticking on the front passenger side seat. The radio had a duct tape on it and was scratched. He heard two voices on the radio as the man started to driving, but the man soon turned the radio off. There were many other things that he picked up during the 10-minute drive to the gravel road where the man finally stopped the car. He described the car as a newer four-door dark blue car with a console between the front seats, and an automatic transmission with the shift lever located in the center console area. A large luggage rack on the trunk, and a light blue cloth interior with dark VIN trim. After he stopped the car, the man got into the back seat with the boy and assaulted him. Jared wiped his mouth on his sweater sleeve several times during the incident, and he doing so secured the evidence that one day would possibly identify his abductor. When the assault was over, the man returned to the front seat by way of the center console. He took the boy's snowsuit, wiped it off, and then returned to the boy. He kept his size 14 stone-washed Lee jeans and his underwear on the front seat. The driver drove off back toward Cold Spring and dropped the boy off near Bells Hill on Highway 158. He threatened Jared on the way back to town, warning him that he was lucky to be alive, and that if the police received a good lead on him as a suspect, he would get him after school and shoot him. When the man stopped the car near Cold Spring, he ordered Jared to get out of and roll around in the snow to wipe his snowboot suit off. After that, he ordered him to run home and to not look back, or he would shoot. As soon as Jared got home, he walked into the door his mother could see something was terribly wrong. She called the police and an investigation began immediately. Jared was able to give investigators a full description of the vehicle and his abductor. He estimated the man to be in his 30s, a white male standing about 5'6" to 5'7" tall, and weighing about 170 pounds. He had dark medium-length hair, brown eyes, fat ears that stuck out a little, a fat nose, bushy eyebrows, and rough, dark skin. He had a bit of a beer belly and spoke in a deep, raspy voice. The man was wearing camouflage fatigues, black army boots, a military-style watch, a dark-colored zipper vest, and a brown baseball cap. 3 days after Jared's abduction, on the morning of January 16, 1989, Stearns County Deputy Ziegler contacted Detective Doug Pierce and advised him that he had gained information about a possible suspect in the kidnapping. Ziegler identified the possible suspect of Danny James Heinrich, a nearby Painesville. He informed Pierce that Heinrich drove a 1987 dark blue four-door Mercury Topaz. Other descriptive factors of the car were consistent with the vehicle that Jared had described. What was unclear was how Detective Ziegler came across the information about Heinrich, but it is believed that to have originated from the Painesville Police Department, as they had apparently identified Heinrich as a suspect in the Painesville assaults cluster. Ziegler contacted Pierce again that day to notify him that he had learned that Heinrich was in the National Guard unit base in Winmar, Minnesota, and that he was known to frequently wear military fatigues. Heinrich's physical description at the time was that he was 5'5" tall, weighing 160 pounds, and had brown eyes and brown-colored hair. Detective Pierce was later able to confirm that Danny Heinrich was indeed a member of the National Guard unit base in Winmar. There is no published information about where Heinrich attended meetings that were mandated following his 1986 DWI conviction, but it is... I don't know what DWI means, but I'm going to look that up later. Convicted, but it is interesting to note that there was an AA meeting in downtown Cold Spring on January 13, 1989, just a couple blocks away, and an hour and a half before the abduction and assault of Jared. On January 17, 1989, Detective Pierce gathered 6 photographs of various men whose physical buildings and characteristics were similar to what Jared had described. One of the photographs was a current photo of Daniel Heinrich. Pierce asked Jared to review the photos and asked him to identify anyone from the photos who looked like his attacker. He identified Heinrich and one other man as resembling his abductor. Danny Heinrich was employed at Mastermark Industries at the time of Jared's abduction. On January 18, 1989, 5 days after the incident, Detective Pierce and Leland drove to Mastermark and looked at Heinrich's vehicle, a 1987 Mercury Topaz. The detectives matched up the license plate number with the motor vehicle records to confirm the car belonged to Heinrich. They noted that the interior of the car appeared to be gray-colored, and found there was no luggage rack on the trunk of the vehicle. That was a detail that presented a significant difference from Jared's account of his abductor's car. Despite the strong circumstantial evidence that Heinrich was involved in Jared's kidnapping, and the suggestion from the law enforcement that Heinrich should be looked at as a suspect, investigators in Jared's case apparently failed to question Danny Heinrich. Cold Springs police and Stearns County investigators continued to seek information to identify Jared's abductor. There was a pair of published stories in the Cold Spring Record about Jared's assault in February 1989, an article in the Painesville Press, and a front-page story in St. Cloud's Times. All the articles featured a sketch of the abductor, or a physical description of the car he drove, a physical description of the man, and also announced a Crime Stoppers reward for information leading to the man's conviction. Although the case remained very active, there was no additional information released for several months. In July or August of 1989, more than 6 months after Jared's abduction, a man in a light tan van attempted to abduct a 9-year-old boy, Andrew, in the township of St. Joseph, near Kramer Lake. The incident occurred just off the County Highway 2, which links Cold Springs to St. Joseph. The man in St. Jacob and the man in that case was described as a white male in his late 20s, with dark brown hair, dark eyes, a slender build, and a fair complexion. The man had a mole on his forehead. And in addition, okay, we're gonna have to go past until, okay. And in a manner similar to the assailant's behavior in the Painesville incidences, he asked Andrew to tell him his age. 1989 was a very stressful year for Danny Heinrich. He was having financial problems and lost his 1987 Mercedes Mercury Topaz to repossession in March. Knowing that he had problems dealing with his parents' divorce a few years earlier, the news of his mother's engagement to another man would have been another understandable source of a significant stress to Heinrich. His mother remarried in May 1989. Heinrich lost a grandmother in July. To cap it all off, he lost his job of finger hunt in St. Cloud on October 8, 1989. The company was just finishing up a high technology distribution center, but was facing several market-based challenges simultaneous to their rapid expansion. The facilities had announced the layoff of several white-collared workers in September, and the dismissal of blue-collar workers will soon follow. In 1989, Heinrich had split time between living in his mother's apartment in Painesville and his father's home on Lake Coronos, 3 miles east of Painesville. On October 12, 1989, the home of one of Howard Heinrich's neighbors caught fire. It was the home of Roger and Kathy Larson, and it was just down the road from Heinrich's place on State Highway 55. The fire was investigated as an arson fire. On the night of October 22, 1989, just 10 days after Larson's fire, and exactly 2 weeks after Heinrich lost his job of finger hunt, Jacob Wetterling was kidnapped from a dark dead-end road just south of the small town of St. Joseph. On the morning after Jacob's abduction, investigators used a bloodhound to track Jacob's scent up to Razor's driveway. At the point, Jacob's last footprints were found adjacent to the tire tracks, and another set of unknown footprints. Plaster casts of tire and shoe prints were made. Investigators keyed on those tire tracks, and there was enough detail in the tread prints that they were able to exclude a suspicious car that had been abandoned near Lake Oweso. On the basis of the car's tire treads, prints not matching those left behind at the scene of Jacob's abduction. Recalling the Stearns County deputy Robert Zigmer had suggested that Danny Heinrich be considered a suspect in Jared's abduction and assault in January. Stearns County jailers came from ward forward to Stearns County investigators immediately after Jacob Wetterling's abduction, retiring their behalf that Heinrich should be looked at for Jacob's case. And we're going to stop there because we're going to break it up into 3 parts. So that was part 1. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, give them a like. Comment what you like about them. Make sure they're nice comments because I will be deleting the mean comments. I know it's a mean book, but but I don't tolerate mean comments or rude. So make sure they're nice. And if you want more videos, click that subscribe button. It'll pop up in the middle of the screen. And if you want to check out more videos, there should be more of my videos up top as well. One there and one there. Thank you so much for watching, and dare to dream, guys.